And with that, let's dive into our first topic of the day, guys. Our first topic of the day is brought to us by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have even more ways than ever to play smart and win big. New to FanDuel? Well, right now is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com/UCSS and place your first $5 bet. If that bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Jay, it is the first time a familiar friend will be an opposing foe tonight in Terry Francona as the Guards take on the Cincinnati Reds as part of MLB's rivalry weekend. How are you going to feel for the first time seeing Tito in the opposing team's dugout?
A little nostalgic. It'll be a little weird. It's not. I think it's going to be more weird when the Reds have to come here. That will really be bizarre to look over to the visitors' dugout and to see Terry Francona. I think back during Tito's time here with great fondness. He turned this franchise around. I always tell the story about he and I were doing a segment together at ESPN when he covered his mic and told me that he was leaving as soon as we were done with this segment. We were doing a SportsCenter segment live. He said, as soon as I'm done with this, guess where I'm going? And I said, where? And he said, Cleveland. And I got immediately excited. I said, what? And I go, is it for what I think it is? And he goes, yeah, but. And so then after the segment was over, I turned my mic off, and he had taken his mic off because I wanted more information. I'm like, this isn't an interview. You don't do an interview. Terry Francona gets the job.
Right.
He said, yeah, please don't say anything, but yeah, I'll be the skipper next year. Sure enough, he did. Now, what the funny thing was, Bobby Valentine, I believe this was correct. Bobby Valentine was fired at that time. This was the end of the season, and he was fired. And Tito told me that he had a 1 o'clock flight to Cleveland. So the producer gets in my ear and said, hey, listen, Bobby Valentine was just fired. We just called Tito. He's on his way back. And I literally thought, no, he can't come back. He can't come back. He's got a very important date. So about 10 minutes later, Tito comes running in the studio, shorts, flip-flops, shirt, tie, jacket. And I immediately go up to him. I'm like, Tito, you could have said you didn't want to do this. You're leaving here. No, I couldn't do that to you guys, man. They want me to come up here. So we did another segment on Bobby Valentine, and I'm wrapping this thing up as fast as I can. All right, Tito, thanks. You got to go. And he left.
That's funny.
I love Terry Francona. I loved working with him. I loved him as a manager. I love him as a human being. He's a good human. So it's going to be weird looking across the dugout when he's here. You had a second question in. Can I just advance my thought to that?
Yeah. Hang on real quick.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
You know who broke the story of Tito coming to Cleveland?
Bull.
Yep.
Was it Bull?
It was Bull.
Wow, how funny is that?
It's like the one story that he's ever broken.
How about that?
And no one gives him credit
No
for
one gave him credit.
He tells the story, so he broke that story. And then
where did he get it? Just out of curiosity.
I don't think he can totally say where he got it.
I can't tell you where. I know where he got it, but I can't tell you.
That's fine. That's fine.
Out of his own.
No, that's good. Hey, listen,
I know
that's
he's
fair.
told us where he got it. I don't think he can say
The
it
irony
publicly.
is, I had it probably for 3 or 4 days before he
him.
did.
Yeah.
And I said, I told my wife and my son, and that was it.
Yeah.
And they all know the deal. They're like,
the best
this
part
guy's here.
The best part of Bull breaking that story is he got the news breaking itch from that. And do you guys remember this part?
Oh,
of the story,
did he
Jim?
really?
Yeah, he screwed something else up.
Yeah,
didn't he?
immediately he felt he was on a heater, got a tip from someone he felt confident in the
Oh,
same way he
no.
felt confident in Tito. And it was about some running back. Monty Ball. It was Monty Ball was going to sign with the Browns. So he tweeted out,
That was the end of it.
Monty Ball to the Browns. It didn't happen, and Bull said, I'm retiring from the news breaking industry.
That's smart. Do you remember when
He hit
Kirk
one,
Herbstreit did that
he
too?
swung and missed
Yes.
and was
Kirk
out.
Herbstreit had Les Miles coming to Michigan.
Yes.
And by the way, Kirk was right.
Of course he was.
Kirk had the story.
Yes.
It was lock solid.
Yeah.
And, sometimes things happen, and then the course of history has changed.
And people change their minds sometimes.
Well, that absolutely. Les was like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work out. didn't happen. And Kirk's not in the news breaking business. Neither was Bull. But yeah, that's a rough racket. You guys live in a very, very dicey world.
I don't get hung up. I don't want to get too far off the Francona path. I don't get as wrapped up in it as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
There's only if you're really going to do this, there's a very, very small circle of people that you can trust for the information. It's the agent, it's the team owner, it's the GM.
Or the player.
The player. But it's a tight circle.
Right. And you need to corroborate.
If it doesn't come from one of those, you really can't go with it.
No, you can't.
Because you wind up in situations like that, where if you just hear it from somebody else, man, and it's funny because sometimes it winds up being true, and people want to take their victory lap. It's like, okay, now do it again. Like I dare you to do it again and get it right.
The newsbreakers, we know who they are in each sport.
Yeah.
And they deserve their flowers. That is not an easy world.
I've said before, I'd never want to do that job.
No, that's
Shout
tough.
out to Dak Prescott. We were supposed to get him. He was supposed to get
That's what happens. That's what happens when you try and become a newsbreaker and you're not. That's exactly what happens.
It really is a tough road. But on Terry, the second part of that question was, are the guards better off without Terry? Or the way things worked out?
That's a complicated question.
It is complicated, but I have an easy answer, quick answer. Of course they are. Terry's on the way out.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he's going to manage his entire career here. He likely won't. Stephen Vogt will get a huge payday offer from someone, the Cubs, the Yankees, somebody.
The Brewers just went through it.
And that's exactly right. We are with what's amazing to me, Jason, and I wish someone could explain this to me. We've had, I would argue definitively, one of the top 5 front offices in baseball for the last decade. And I'm stunned that these guys have stayed committed and that they haven't been poached to other bigger markets.
Well, what's funny about that is it leads right into the question I think Mike has set up for the TV show about owners in town.
Yes.
Ownership is why they're still here. Like, Mike Chernoff had the opportunity to go back and run the Mets.
Right.
The hometown team that he grew up rooting for.
Yes.
And he said, I'm good in Cleveland. Why do they do that? Because of the job stability that the Dolans provide.
Right.
And as hard as we are and as hard as everyone is on the Dolans for spending, and it's rightfully so, they have created a culture of stability that these guys know. I've got kids. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. We look at the coaches, the GMs, as just these personal public figures and don't realize they've got private lives with kids.
Right.
Kevin Stefanski has kids like right in that wheelhouse of junior high going into high school. Like this is hard on kids when dad gets fired and they have to uproot them from their lives and you have to take them and move across the country and they have to start over in a different city.
Yeah.
Kevin's just the first one that popped in my head, but they've all gone through it. Cavs executives have gone through it with kids.
It's hard.
And they wind up staying in this city even after they get fired because of the kids. Antonetti has kids. Chernoff had you want to go to a place where you can put in roots for 20 years and you can dig in and know I can be here. If I do a good job, I can be here as long as I want to be.
Remember this conversation because this is going to pay dividends in something I'm going to say coming up a little later. Just remember that.
The topic that Jay is talking about, I really want to tease this. Every day on Friday we do 90 minutes on YouTube, 30 minutes on Channel 3. You're really going to want to flip over to Channel 3. If you don't have the app, you can download KYC Plus, watch it anywhere. The question is a fascinating question. Mike, I'm so glad we're doing this topic. I have a very easy answer, but the answer is if all 3 Cleveland sports teams could be owned by the same person, would you want that person to be Jimmy Haslam or would you want that person to be Dolan? It's a complicated question as well, but we're going to get into that. And I think, imagine for a second, and I'm sure this goes through his mind, imagine being Cherney and sending your kids to private or public schools in New York, and your first year the Mets are 68 and 96 or 94, whatever the math comes out to. Like, that place is brutal.
Yep.
Not just the media, the fans. Where in Cleveland, you have a little bit of cover. Not that he's ever had a season like that here, and not that he would have a season like that with the Mets. I think really all they lack is somebody like him, like Antonetti, and that those guys have stuck around for as long as they have boggles my mind. I don't expect Stephen Vogt to, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he manages here for 25 years and then retires. I don't see that happening because he's going to be offered a massive payday. And we don't know how the new owners are going to handle things. Maybe the new owners will come in and say, okay, this is a guy we got to lock up right now, give him an 8-year deal, lock him down, and don't think about it anymore. But
I mean, Tito made quite a bit of money when he was here. He was one of the higher paid managers.
He did. They were fair to him with his salary. This is pure supposition and speculation on my part.
Yeah.
Just from watching from a distance, not having a single conversation with Tito about this.
Yeah.
If I had to guess how things unfolded, Tito finally got tired of the team not putting forth the checkbook that he needed to get over that hump and win a World Series here. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I find it interesting that I think the epicenter was all of this was after the I think they were the Guardians then, after they flew the white flag and traded Savali, when they were still very much in punching distance.
That was their first year as the Guardians. It was our first year as a show.
Okay, that was the Guardians. After that, I believe the very next day they got no hit in Texas.
Houston, I think.
Houston, you're right, Houston. Like the very next day. And it was obvious that the building was on fire and management had to fly to Houston to address Tito and the team to let them know why they did it. Now, oddly enough, I think that trade worked out extremely well. But at the time, if you're on that team and you see management do that, you don't care what happens 3 years from now.
Of course.
You want to win now.
Yes.
And I think Terry said, it's never going to happen here.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen here. Mm-hmm. And I think that the goodwill that he had with the front office and the owners partly dissipated because he said, I want to win another. It was great what I did with Boston. I wanted to do that again at another town, and it would have been great for my story if it could have been in Cleveland. But if it can't be in Cleveland, maybe it can be in Cincinnati or somewhere else. So that's what I think happened, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. When you ask the question, are the Guardians better off? I mean, he's a 2-time World Series manager. He's probably going to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best in the game. It's hard to say you're better off without that guy. But
long term, though.
The nuance to that is I do think it had gotten a little bit stale after 11 years. It happens, even with the best. It happens. And I do think you're right. I think I'm not surprised he's back managing. I'm very surprised at how fast he's back managing.
Right.
I thought he would take
time is of the essence when you're
when you're at his stage of life.
You can't sit around for 5 years.
And I'm a little surprised at the job that he took. I was a little surprised it was Cincinnati.
Why? They've got one of the most exciting young players in the game.
Yeah, they do, but are they going to spend to the levels? I mean, they did sign Joey Votto to that contract.
I think what happened was he asked that question. I'm not signing up for another Cleveland. I'm not coming to a city that's not going to strike when the iron is right. I'm not saying that you go Yankees and Dodgers and spend scorched earth money every year.
Yeah.
But I believe that the ground here is fertile for success. We need some sunlight and some rain. That's money. You need to provide that. If you give me that promise, I will take this job and we will win here.
Yeah.
And that's what I think happened.
I mean, also, you know, I don't know how big of a factor this is, probably very small, but it's worth pointing out. Obviously, he loves Arizona. He spends most of his time in Arizona. The Guardians and Reds share a spring training complex. So he's back at the same complex. So he, you know what I mean?
He knows the drill there.
It's very convenient to him to
go
go
from
from
that there
Tucson
was
to that.
a side to Terry when making the decision? This wasn't Milwaukee. This wasn't Pittsburgh. This wasn't Kansas City, you know, one of those similar markets. I'm wondering, and truth serum is the only way you would ever get the answer to this, or if he decides one day to write a book, which I hope he does. But I'm wondering if it wasn't a little bit more attractive for the reason you just stated. It's in Goodyear. I get to see them every year. Mm-hmm. Not in a good way, but like, look at me now.
Yeah.
It's in Ohio. It's a similar sized market. I think that was not the reason he took the job, but I think that was maybe a cherry on top where he got to say, yeah, this could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
If we can spend some money and we can win there, I can look up I-71 and say, yeah, this can be done if you add the money element into it.
I do think that I think there's some truth to what you're saying. I think he probably did get a little tired of the budgets being what they were. Mark Shapiro said that when he left. When he left and went to Toronto, he said he'd like to someday be able to write a check and be able to retain some of these guys. And it's natural.
Sure.
You know, I think we go back to the Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff conversation. These are really, really smart dudes. right?
Very.
They're and I'm going to make the correlation to something I said about Kevin Stefanski, and I think I don't know them overly well, but I know enough about Chris and Mark that I think, or Mike, Chris and Mike, that I think that they like the challenge of give them a coat hanger, some Windex, and some Scotch tape, and they'll build you a bomb. Because that's how Stefanski is. Kevin likes the challenge of, hey, we got 12 guys out. We got to put together a game plan with what we have left to try and win this game. And I think absolutely, I think Chris and Mike go about their job the same way of they enjoy the challenge of trying to do it under some constraints here in Cleveland.
I think they're smart enough to understand, both of them, that if you win here in the city where it's been impossible to win for 75 years, you win here, that's different than winning in Boston or New York or LA or Chicago.
Yeah.
That's why 2016 for me, people ask me all the time, like, so what's the biggest ding? What's your biggest bruise? It will, for me, probably always be 2016.
2016 is so odd because there was such a euphoria still from the Cavs in June. That was just June, and here we are October, and people are like, wait a minute. We never get to do this at all. Now you're going to tell us we're one game away from doing it twice? And when they lost, there are some true diehard baseball fans that I know that, like, they're okay with the Browns. They like the Browns. They like the Cavs. But they bleed baseball.
Yeah.
And they were devastated by that.
That's me.
But there are very few of you. Most people were like, nah, we had June. We're good.
You're right.
It sucks that they lost. It sucks. Like, had you not had that parade, had the Warriors finished off the Cavs, and then the Guardians blew, then the Indians blew 3-1, oh my God, the devastation.
Jay, would you survive that month if that was the outcome?
Of what?
If they had lost.
If the Warriors had finished off the Cavs, and then the Cubs came back from 3-1 down and beat the Indians.
I would have
imagine?
it would have been, I mean, we used to that, right? I mean,
yeah, but that would have been the most devastating 5-month stretch in the history of any city's sports.
I think when it comes to the Cavs, and I kind of said this a little bit earlier, kind of alluded to it, when it comes to the Cavs and the Guardians, there isn't that much in terms of devastation. And what I mean by that is the Cavs and the Guardians are at a different position in the city. Everybody, the pressure is always on the Browns, whether we like it or not. It's there. They're the biggest in the city. Everybody bleeds brown. That's just what it is. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the Cavs and the Guardians are in a unique position where they are able to, so to speak, think about it like the way you guys have talked about with Chernoff and Antonetti and guys that are really smart and don't have the level of pressure that the Browns have. So they can afford to be here for 20 years, right?
That's a really good point, G.
They can afford to be here for 20 years. The Cavs, and I had to sit back and tell myself, I had to step back and look at it and look at from the Cavs' perspective, hey, if the Cavs lose, right, in the second round, you're never going to get 90% of the population to get up and say, like we're in New York, and say this is unacceptable, or the Lakers or the Boston Celtics. It's just not that type of ball game. So when you lose games and you look at it, fans tend to look at it as, oh, well, we had a nice run. Oh, well, we had a nice regular season. We got young guys. They're good. They look at it more as entertainment. And then those two organizations actually look at it as business, because they're like, okay, if I'm the Cavs, why am I blowing up everything? Hey, I got some young guys. They're under contract. We get 64 wins. We got a nice, the field house is nice. People show up to the games. We get good press. Hey, we didn't win this year. We'll tweak a few things and come back next year. Guardians, they like, look, hey, we can't sign everybody. Hey, we got guys that we develop. We're always fiscally responsible. We give you a good product. Hey, we're going to make the playoffs, compete in the division. And people are like, okay, that's fine for the second and third. So sometimes, even myself, you want to win and you want to be like, nah, we got to do everything possible. But the reality of the situation for those two teams, that's not the reality. And honestly, it's not the reality of the fan base. We'll get upset for a little bit, like you said, Jason, in June. But hey, you gave me a nice June. You gave me a run.
Yeah, and with the Guardians, hey, we had a couple of weeks of October baseball. That was a bonus.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Imagine for a second if the Browns had gone 14-3. Would that be the equivalent, like 64-18?
Yes.
Like
probably.
14-3.
Yeah.
And they win, their first, they don't have the first round bye because somebody went 15-2, and they beat the wild card team, stomped them.
Yeah.
Then they advance to the divisional round. and they get boat raced by
a wild card
Denver.
team or
Yeah,
team
I don't care.
barely
a team
got
that they
in.
were heavily favored, and it was a home game. And they mailed in the performance that the Cavs did. This city would still be we would still be in the process of a standing 8 count. We'd all be walking around like,
in the days.
what just happened? Someone just punched me in the mouth and I didn't even see it coming. And that distinction between the Browns and the Cavs and the Guardians is really stunning to me. I've talked on this show about this program that I just, happened upon. And I say I don't watch much TV, and I don't. But on A&E, they always have some interesting shows on A&E, and I'll go there and I'll look. And I saw this show that was running, I think it's called Stadium Lockup. And they shot it last year at Cleveland Browns Stadium. 9 episodes, 1 for each home game. And I caught probably 15 minutes of 2 or 3 episodes.
I just saw a clip of this the other day, and I didn't know what it was from. So
Watch
that explains
it.
what it's
It's
from.
on A&E. If you go to the app, I think you can stream every show. But the one that was on this week was episode 9. So it was the last game of the year, right? And it was around New Year's Day, and it was a warm day. There were guys that we didn't have coats on. And basically, it's all about the incredible job the security staff does. They have cameras trained on every single seat, and they're so good, they can zoom in high def 4K, and they can get a picture of you sitting in your seat that's just as clear as the picture that we send out at home. And they use it for fights, and they have that text line. And then as soon as a problem is texted in, they immediately call up that camera, zoom in. They're like, oh, it's the guy with the red coat. He's the instigator. And they go get him, and they throw him out. But in this particular episode, there was a gentleman that was so drunk. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody this drunk at a game. Couldn't stand, couldn't walk. And they ended up having to, rush him out of there. And then a woman had a seizure. Wow. And there were fights everywhere. Wow. And I go, this is what being a Browns fan does to us. This is what it does. This is week 9. This is the end of a long, long season. And they're getting bombed by the Dolphins. And everybody is just, taking out their frustrations on one another. Browns fans were fighting with Browns fans. Typically, it's like a fan from the other team's fan base gets in a fight. And no, this time it was Browns fans fighting Browns fan. We were fighting amongst ourselves. It's seizures, drunks. And I'm like, this is the life of the Browns fan. This is unbelievable. And for the Guardians and the Cavs, I do feel like, it's house money, man. We made the playoffs, all good. Hey, we'll get them again next year. Bring back the core 4. Let's go.
Yeah, hey, listen.
But if this was the Browns?
No. He would.
Oh, my God.
No, that wouldn't be the thing.